Hi, everybody. I am back to share with you the next chapter of my podcast. Chapter 5 is entitled All in a Moment. Manipulators and narcissists can convince you that you are crazy, and the gaslighting can create a delusional world that we can live in forever. For more than 3 years, the constant repetitive narrative that consumed my days and nights eventually paid off. Yes, I am convinced that all of those memories of the abuse were just dreams. My abuser had not tried anything with me, not since my confession at 10 and a half years old. So what more proof do I need that nothing actually happened, right? They were all dreams. After the confession, I struggled in school. I was uninterested in anything to do with going to school, being social, or learning. It brought me way too much anxiety. Sunday nights, I would dread knowing another week of school was just ahead. By grade 6, however, my bully had gone to another school, which I was very thankful for. However, now I can look back on him and know that his actions in class, always disruptive, loud, mean to others, and even stabbing our teacher with a protractor, that he had problems of his own. In an age where mental health wasn't really recognized, a kid's behavior was blamed on them, instead of how they were coping and dealing with their home life. I can now see the similarities between myself and him. We both suffered, but in different ways. He just preyed on the vulnerable, and unfortunately, I was that person. But it does not excuse how his behavior was towards me. And even though he left, my weight was still my main issue. It was my issue in holding back my confidence, expressing myself, and who I was. I did have friends, and especially one girl who also seemed to be a bit of an outsider. We got along very well. The other girls in our class, although all very nice, seemed to be split up into 2 groups who despised each other. But thankfully, my friend and I seemed to be the neutral territory. I did ask out one boy. He was in my class, even though it was a split grade and he was older than me. And he was my neighbor as well. We hung out occasionally and played games in their backyard. So one day in grade 7, I mustered up the courage to write him a note asking him out. And apparently he was going to say yes, until his friends in grade 8 started teasing him about being liked by the fat girl in class. So instead of getting a yes, he told me no. That was the first time that my heart was broken, and I remember crying for a few days. I also tried out for the school play in grade 8. I loved music. I still played piano, and I even enjoyed singing. I had been part of the school choir for a few years and was excited but nervous to try out for the musical. I have a decent voice and felt very proud of myself for singing all on my own in front of everyone during the tryouts. I was very nervous, but impressed the music teacher so much that even though I didn't get the lead or another big part, they created a whole song for me just to sing at the end of the play. That made me feel really good. Until my friend overheard the teachers talking and saying that I would have gotten the lead of the play if it hadn't have been for my weight. That was a blow to the last bit of my pride and courage about myself. So I stopped trying. Every effort or any situation that I got excited about and came from my heart seems like I just got shut down. So why try? I never tried out for another play. I never asked out another boy. and I tried to step back into the shadows where no one could see me. One of my closest confidants during these years was actually my sister. My mother worked shift work at a local factory, still at the same location that my father still worked at. So my sister looked after me a lot. We spent a lot of time with each other, and usually wherever she went, I followed along. She worked at a local restaurant and would occasionally bring in treats for my class, which made her quite popular with all of them. She introduced me to music through her vast record collection, and her being 14 years older than me, I still have an affection for 80s music. She taught me to play card games and basic household skills. Being in a single-parent household, it means everyone acted like a team member to keep things working. To go back to reference chapter 1 of the podcast, my sister did drop out of high school due to all of the stress of my parents' separation and divorce. My father was my sister's stepfather, and a similarity that she and I had in common was that now our fathers were no longer in our lives. I never met my sister's father, as he was far gone out of my mom's and sister's life before I was even born. With Mom working so much to make ends meet, it sometimes felt that it was just my sister and I. As stated in the family analysis, my sister had developmental difficulties. She struggled in school, and although she eventually returned and finished her high school diploma, she did not go to college or extend her education in any way. Comprehension of more complex situations in her life were very overwhelming, and she never strived for more than her daily routines, simply working and play. Even my abuser, when my sister was not around, would say that she was 50 cards short of a deck. Apparently, he thought it was funny to make fun of other people and not just me and my weight. Looking back now, she did have a codependency on all types of relationships and people-pleasing tendencies. Another thing that we will have in common. Whether friends or dating, she immersed herself in their attention and approval. Finding love, acceptance, and connection was a struggle for her. Again, my sister and I were very close. But despite this, I still did not confide in her about my internal battle. I couldn't even tell her my dark mantras and how well they had been working for me. Until they didn't. One Easter weekend in grade 7, we had an unusual visit from our family to celebrate the holiday. Normally, it was just my mom, my sister, and I, and the family that lived hours away usually only traveled for Christmas. But this Easter was special because we hosted the entire family, including my abuser and his wife. Everything was normal. We visited, we laughed, played cards, ate ham and scalloped potatoes, our traditional Easter dinner, and everything was normal until it wasn't. My abuser and his wife had traveled in their brand new van they had just purchased, and like anyone who gets a new car, they wanted to show it off. I had just returned from school and was excited to see the family, and also excited to see this van. And my abuser took it upon himself to take me outside to show me the car. So him and I went outside for him to show me. Just him and I, alone. Everyone else was inside. First, he showed me the front seats, and like any kid, I played around with all of the buttons, looked at all the new gadgets, and everything was normal. Then he opened up the sliding back door to show me the back, and then it happened. All in one moment. It was no longer normal. He simply patted the middle seat, looked at me with a creepy grin and look, and said, "And this folds into a bed." He said it not as a statement, but as an invitation. And all in one single moment, everything changed with a simple hand gesture of patting the foldable seats. A sinister look with his face of the innocent man quickly faded, and the look of a predator took its place. The mask he had been wearing all this time was invisible to me, and he revealed for only one moment his true self. And all in one moment, the walls I had put in to contain the memories of the abuse came crashing down. The lies that I had told myself for years of them being dreams were now just that, all lies. The dreams were real. The dark mantras were all lies. I stood frozen and stunned, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to even breathe. And as quickly as his pervasive confession was given, he shut the door, turned around, and went back into the house. He left me there, alone, still unable to move. I was in shell shock. All of the visions of the past came flooding forward into my mind like a tsunami. Like I had died inside, and my life flashed before my eyes, but with all the bad stuff. What do I do with this information? What do I say? Everything I had convinced myself were all lies. Lies that I spent years mindlessly deceiving myself of was the truth all this time. I didn't want to believe it, and I couldn't. My entire mind and body went through another panic attack in silence, comatose, exactly like I did 3 years prior, sitting beside my mother on the couch when I first revealed the evilness of my abuser. I was just 13 years old, standing there, finally looking back at the house where my abuser just entered back into, and to portray his innocent, loving self once again, laughing, chatting, and eating with the family, all like normal. What just happened? I felt like I had been hit by an invisible bomb. What do I do? This can't be real. This can't be happening. Maybe I misinterpreted what I had just witnessed. Maybe it was all wrong or false. Maybe what I had just experienced in that single moment, maybe that was the dream. Every part of my body screamed. Every part of my emotions were drowning. Every part of my 13-year-old mind couldn't cope. I didn't want them to be real. They couldn't be. How could all of what I'm remembering happen to me be undeniably real? I couldn't cope. The fear of everything being true reared its ugly head, all in his eyes. I didn't want to cope. And after convincing everyone for years that they were all dreams, everyone including myself, who would believe me now? In my mind, no one would believe me. So all in one moment, the truth slapped me in the face. I couldn't cope. And in that moment, I decided that it was easier not to believe it. All in one moment, I walked back into my house, went back into with the family, with him there, and everything went back to normal. In reality, the darkness I had sunk into in the last 3 years just became darker. Everything I chose not to believe, all the mantras I had said about how they were all dreams that I found comfort in for so many years consumed me. Since I didn't know what to do about the truth, I just kept it by myself, pushing it down farther, deeper, and darker, until I was trapped inside myself, trapped in a functioning body. I became more isolated, kept even more to myself, and for the first time, my mind felt completely disconnected to my emotions and physical existence. According to the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Disassociation, they call this a trauma-related disassociation. Quote, sometimes described as a mental escape when physical escape is not possible, or when a person is so emotionally overwhelmed that they cannot cope any longer. Sometimes disassociation is like switching off. Some survivors describe it as a way of saying, "This isn't happening to me." These reactions are usually temporary, but in some cases of severe or repeated trauma, disassociation may last longer. This can be frightening and difficult to explain to others. Unquote. My disassociation had lasted 3 years after my confessions at 10 years old, and now at 13, the cycle started all over again. For the next 3 years, until I was 16 years old, my disassociation was so severe, but I functioned barely. Let's quote the study of trauma again. First was the disassociation, then come the specific symptoms. Quote, depersonalization refers to being disconnected from yourself or your body. Some people feel parts of their body are not real. Depersonalization happens when people are distressed and is more common among people who were mistreated as children. Unquote. I remembered choosing not to feel pain. And if I stubbed my toe, I just chose not to feel it. Twisted my ankle, there was no pain there. Biting my nails and cuticles and even knuckles until they bled. Nothing. No pain. Then there is derealization. Quote, a sense of external world not being real or being changed in some way. People might say that the world looks fake, flat, or far away. Sometimes people say the world looks as if they were watching a movie, or as if they were in a dream or play acting on stage. Derealization can help a person cope with trauma by making the trauma seem less real. This creates a mental distance to help them survive. Unquote. For me, the next 3 years didn't seem real. I simply coasted. I rode above my thoughts and my emotions. I didn't know from one moment to another what was real. If 3 years of convincing myself that 5 years of abuse were only dreams, and now they weren't, was what I'm experiencing right now even real? That's how much trauma can screw up your mind. Another symptom of disassociation is dissociative amnesia. Quote, this is where memory gaps of trauma can block out minutes to years of your life, forgetting part or all of the trauma, forgetting things that remind you of the trauma, unquote. This is one symptom I did not have. Maybe because I convinced myself that the dreams of the abuse were all just dreams. I remember every detail vividly. The places, the sensations, the smells, what I wore, what I didn't wear, my size difference compared to him, and the look in his eyes. It was the same look that he had given me when he patted the back of the seat and told me that it could fold into a bed. There is no amnesia. There never was. Like I said in the beginning of chapter 1, my memory is one of my greatest strengths. But in this moment, For the next 3 years, my greatest strength seemed like my greatest enemy, killing me slowly from the inside. During the next 3 years, as I pretended everything was normal, my coping skills and responses became worse. Instead of just overeating, now I binged and purged. At home, I would eat large portions of food and drink lots of water, and then sneak off into the bathroom to force myself to be sick, all the while feeling guilty that I was wasting food that my mother could barely afford to provide for us. This wasn't every meal or every day, just when the anxiety was especially hard. Anxiety filled every moment of every day, and just like the previous years, it was worse at night. I didn't want to go to bed as the memories played in my head like demons. And when I fell asleep, I didn't want to wake up at all. I wished I wasn't here. I wish this didn't happen to me. I wish I didn't exist at all. From the ages of 13 to 16, I woke up every morning angry that God didn't take me while I slept, and He kept me here. I was angry about that. I was angry that the abuse happened, and I was angry that I was still here. So over time, my disassociation turned into a weird and creative hobby. That first summer that we returned back to my grandmother's home for vacation after the Easter weekend, I started to write. We still visited my abuser and his wife, and while things were still normal in their world, they were far from normal in mine. That first summer, I started writing a book, a novel about a young girl, a horse-crazy girl just like me, that has the opportunity to move far away and live the life of her dreams, surrounded by the country and horses. That summer, I created a world I wanted to exist in because I didn't want to exist in the one I was in. And during these summer and then eventually Christmas visits, my exposure to my abuser continued. I wonder if he knew that I knew that these were not dreams anymore. It seemed like he knew. And just turning 14 years old, he seemed to take notice of my maturing body. He would make comments in moments when we were alone, like how my breasts were getting bigger and that he must have helped that. From time to time, he would reach out to touch me, almost groping me, but I would move away quickly, just in time, and avoid being touched. I avoided him at all costs, and still avoiding the truth to survive. My weight gain continued. The binge and purging continued. The thoughts of escaping this life continued. It all went on while I was dead inside. The cycles of my responses went on. Darkness and depression meant eating in isolation. Anxiety meant my body was vibrating, my heart was racing, and my body was sweaty. Panic meant binge and purging, or sometimes not eating at all. The disassociation and the secrets that I were keeping made myself lock myself in my room every weekend, writing, reading, and listening to music. Chaos on the inside. Everything was normal on the outside. I was normal to my mom, normal to my sister, normal to my family, and most likely just a massive introvert to my friends. But chaos consumed me until I couldn't take it anymore. I was at a breaking point. In my 16th year, in February, the truth had boiled so far to the surface that my anxiety was strangling me. So much so that my throat was closing up to the point where I couldn't swallow food. In grade 10 in high school, I couldn't take it anymore. And while hanging out with a friend at my house, another TV show had triggered me. And it was this anxiety and panic that came to a head and made me decide to tell my mother that the dreams of my abuser and all the dreams that he made us believe were all lies. I would tell her as soon as she got home from work at 7:30. At 7:30 on a Friday night, I sat my mom back down on the couch, fought through my consuming anxiety, and released myself of years of my own deception and told her the truth about the lies.